On this podcast, we talk about different areas of business and all things marketing. My name is Dave Doyle.
And I'm Dave Alton, and this is Social Antics, another marketing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Social Antics. How are you this week, Dave?
I'm fantastic.
Good. I forgot again to
You forgot. We're driving on, that's it.
I've been told the 3 or 4 times now that we've tried to start this again, that to make sure we don't forget to introduce Owen as well, who's with us again producing. So anyway, Dave, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Do you know why?
Why?
Do
you want to explain that one a bit more there?
Emmanuel Macron is French president once again, keeping out the racist bitch. So we're doing pretty well for ourselves. It's a good week.
Good week. What's he in now? Another 5 years, I think, is it? Next 5 years anyway.
Next 5 years, and he is, if I understand it correctly, he is the first ever French president who has gained re-election whilst his party is still in office.
Very
He's
impressive. Doing very well for himself.
Very well for himself.
Very
Yeah.
well.
The main thing is, and look, we'll get on to it later on. And I know there I mentioned Le Pen there a minute ago, who is, for those viewers who don't know, is the head of basically the national party.
Le Pen
in
being
France.
the person you referenced as the...
Le Pen, Le Bic, yes, exactly.
Le Bic.
So, as opposed to Le Bitch, like I said at the start. So, ultimately, she has a lot of what we would consider far-right policies, which a lot of people deem to be a breach of international human rights law. So, for example, just one of the policies that she wanted to put through earlier on this year basically meant that if you had dual citizenship in France, you couldn't work for the public sector. So it was very much a French-first policy, which is just so Stone Age and Dark Age. It's absolutely incredible. So I'm a big fan, for those who haven't seen this before, even though we're both in marketing, typically speaking, one thing that drives me crazy is, if you take Twitter, for example, which we'll get onto a while, the amount of hate and bitterness and just anger out in the world at the moment drives me absolutely crazy. And we've had Brexit, we've had Trump and all the rest of it. Le Pen or Le Bic would have been the exact same thing. So therefore, I'm delighted that Mr. Macron has gained re-election.
Right, so that's enough of that. Anyway, on to business. So a couple of bits of housekeeping this week. Actually, before I do, we never mentioned, actually, I suppose, last week about why we decided to sit where we're sitting in terms of you're on that side and I'm on this side. And I think it was yourself that made the good point. That was probably where we're most comfortable.
My natural home,
yeah,
sitting at a bar.
You've been on that side for years, and before I kind of went into marketing, I was probably on this side of it more. So it was more natural to us to sit on this side of the bar.
Yeah, to be fair, the first time we ever met each other, you nearly turfed me out of a bar that you were managing at the time, unjustifiably as well.
Yeah,
I would might
just
add. But
didn't get it over the line. Yeah, it could have been a different podcast.
Exactly.
I could have had someone else. But this week I decided to bring the beer. So last week you did. My turn this week. So I brought Wicklow Wolf. I've started trying, I suppose, as you mentioned last week, we're not kind of craft beer snobs or anything like that, but I started trying a few craft beers over the last year and different ones. And what?
Fucking alcoholic. I started sampling a few beverages in the evening.
I had some tasters. But I really like Wicklow Wolf. They have a huge range. But what actually caught my attention, sucker for marketing, caught my attention was actually the branding and the packaging inside in the off license. I think they're fantastic. But the beer, I have the Wildfire Hoppy Red Ale. And what do you have?
I have a Mammoth IPA.
A Mammoth IPA.
It's a 6%er.
And just before we come on, you will probably notice if anyone watched last week, like Dave loves the descriptions and how they described the tasting notes and the beers and stuff like that. So I thought it was quite interesting how you were reading out your one. You want to give us another read there? Story time with Dave again?
I actually can't, because there's still beer in this can, and if I tilt it, all the beer is going to fall out.
It is, yeah, sideways, actually.
So I actually can't. But just to give a kind of a sense of it, it says that Mammoth IPA is the big bad wolf of West Coast IPAs, which kind of finished it off for me, to be honest with you, because that is just marketing 101. Nothing about flavors or notes or anything like that. So a shed of hops gives a burst of floral, resinous pine, grapefruit, and mountains of citrus fruit. This punchy IPA is supported by a strong malty backbone.
Mountains. But what I thought was interesting as well, is I don't think we're going to crack this one open because it's what did you say it was?
10%.
10%. So we might give this one a miss tonight.
What is
otherwise
yours
we'll never
there?
get out of here. Mine is 4.6.
Yeah, mine's 6.2.
No. Keep it clean. You already have to get into some trouble this week with the Prince Andrew joke, so keep it clean, will you? So this one is a collaboration series that they do with a few brands. They've done it with Drumchambo, the Shed Distillery, but they decided to do it with Number 21 off license, which is on Coburg Street. So it's called Coburg Street. It's a stout. All kind of inspiration took by Cork. So it's a bourbon barrel aged raspberry imperial stout. So they threw in a bit of Raza now to keep the Cork side of it, but they're celebrating Number 21, 10 years in business. They started in Coburg Street, so I just thought it was interesting to see the collaboration there, which is really good. So we'll enjoy the beers there tonight. So what else have we got on the news for tonight, Dave?
So the first one, which I think is a bit of a freak one, but not something that I suppose would shock that many people, is that Meta, or Facebook, or whatever you want to call them this week, have basically launched a European-wide campaign to start educating consumers a bit more about their glasses, or the face Meta glasses, effectively.
The virtual reality kind of stuff, is it?
No, it's not the Oculuses. No, it's basically just a Ray-Ban partnership that they have, and it basically allows you to record constantly what's in front of you, and then it's obviously voice activated as well. So Facebook take a glasses shot, and it automatically snaps and it puts it up on directly onto your Insta or whatever the story is. So the kind of creepy thing about this, and again, obviously there is a need to do it, but again, it kind of highlights the issue, as there is a point again where technology should just naturally stop, or things should be made illegal. But it's this idea that you can walk around all day with your glasses on, and basically the campaign is about informing people who have these glasses that if you are in a vicinity whereby people may not want to be recorded, or if there is minors in the vicinity, you probably shouldn't be recording. Which the fact that they have to run the campaign shows how ridiculously creepy and intrusive the existence of the technology is in and of itself.
You can already see there's just going to be huge amount of problems come out of this.
But it's stupid. But why does one want to go around all the time recording what's going on? Like, if I come home and let's say I go home to Mammy's house,
right?
And I go home to Mammy's and Mammy asks me, how was your day? It's the most infuriating question of all time, because you're like, I just live my day. I don't want to relive it again, kind of a thing. Do you know what I mean? So it's just like, why like, what's wrong with just having it on your phone or whatever the story is, you know? But you can see how it can cause a huge amount of problems. Like, I mean, if like cinema, copyright, going to conferences, looking at speech, lecturing. Like, I mean,
God forbid, you get recorded what you say.
If I got away with what I was saying to people in the last year and a half with COVID and everything being recorded, I'm aces. I'm done, as far as I'm concerned.
Bulletproof.
But again, it just shows you that, like, if you want something to be disruptive within society in terms of how it actually changes people's behavior, the idea is that you need to eliminate as much friction as possible. The idea that either one, I would buy these glasses and want to use them in the first place, but put that to one side. But the fact that I would have to consciously think constantly whether I am being intrusive to someone else, which in my mind you naturally are, or whether there was a kind of a minor around the place and I'd have to get permission and stuff like that. The whole thing just doesn't make any fucking sense whatsoever. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous. And look, I am not, and it's the two areas that have kind of, there's been their big disruptors, shall we say, are AR, augmented reality, and VR, virtual reality. We've been talking about these for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, and they still are not anyway prominent within the marketing world, business, society.
But I don't think it's not even the glasses side of things. I don't think anything else is set up even to cooperate with them, to be used, to be, you know, like when they're on about going in shopping inside in stores and being able to see what your sitting room is going to look like when you bring home the couch or you paint the walls or the dress on you, you know. No business is set up for this at the moment.
I can see some logic in doing it, but it's limited in terms of its application. So the best example that I've seen so far is when you can go into Specsavers. You don't even need the glasses. You just go to Specsavers mirror, and you, as opposed to trying on loads of glasses, you swipe and it shows how you look with different glasses, lenses, which if you're customizing or anything, it helps improve that process because it speeds it up, right? So okay, that's an application, but it's minor enough, right?
But there's no need for glasses. You can just record all the time, basically.
Yeah, effectively.
Right, moving on. So I suppose the other little bit of news we have is we came to this, I suppose, with a little overarching line to kind of throw it off, and we'll come back to it next week because there was nothing really after happening in terms of the Elon Musk and the Twitter scenario. But literally, just literally as we were about to come on and start recording, it's done.
As we sat down. Now,
Oh, yeah.
New York Times, all the major news
RTE.
outlets are saying that it's done and dusted, and there was a statement went out saying that it's done and dusted, and Elon said his
Phones are on airplane mode now, so we don't know what's after happening now.
So look, we are going ahead presuming that this is now happening, and go.
So cool, thanks. So I suppose deal seems to be done, and this podcast will come out a couple of days after the deal is done. So it could be all up in the air. He could have done his 14 days notice and given it back maybe. But apparently he's bought it. It's done. Deal is done. He's now Mr. Twitter now.
I think it doesn't make sense.
Well, I love Scott Galloway's tweet. We mentioned him last week. That
I know,
no, it's not going to happen. He's bluffing. Next thing, Scott Galloway wrong again.
Now, to be fair, that was based on the financing of it. Now, since he's gone in with Morgan have cobbled together a number of banks that have actually given him the loan, and he's basically purchased, or he's gone ahead with the purchase for what we believe is to be somewhere between $44 and $50 billion, which is grand to just back at the couch, down the side of the couch by one of the biggest social media networks in the world. But I suppose the main thing for me is that I fundamentally disagree with one person having complete 100% ownership over what I believe is the most powerful news platform in the world. Like we used the phrase last week, if you want a nice picture of a dog, you go to Instagram. If you want a video of a dancing dog, you go to TikTok. If you're in your 60s, you go on Facebook. Anyone who wants news predominantly is going on Twitter, Reddit to another extent, and there's other ones there. But it is to have someone like him who says he cares about free speech.
I'm just thinking actually now, when you say that, will he unban Trump?
It's the first thing he'll do. He has to. So let me read a couple of quotes that have come out over the last kind of week or so, the last couple of days, right? So, on purchasing, he said that free speech is the bedrock of a functioning democracy, and Twitter is the digital town square where matters vital to the future of humanity are debated. He then goes on to say, I also want to make Twitter better than ever by enhancing the product with new features, making the algorithms more open source to increase trust, defeating spam bots, and then authenticating all humans. Now, what's important here is that my attitude is that Musk takes a very, very libertarian view of free speech in that the internet is just uncontrolled and it's a bit of a wild west. So he did an interview last week with TEDx, and he was basically asked what the definition of free speech was for someone like him. And he said, a good sign as to whether there is free speech is someone you don't like allowed to say something you don't like? If that is the case, then we have free speech. Now that is a very, very dumbed down version of what free speech actually is. So for example, during the pandemic, you had people who were medical scientists, doctors, chief medical officers, whatever you want to call them, people who are very, very educated in everything to do with pandemics, controlling diseases such as COVID. And then you also had Bill from down the street. And Bill
putting
from down
in
the
his
street,
tuppence worth.
Bill from down the street hasn't a fucking iota what. And again, it goes back to the Le Pen situation, right? Which is why I think it's important that someone like Macron gets back in, because he's a moderate and he'll take the information that science actually presents him with, and then he will make decisions accordingly.
Just a bit of a stable ship kind of a thing, yeah.
Exactly. And like what you have in this scenario whereby you've basically a Wild West. Like, so for example, I don't agree with racism. Based on that definition, does that mean that, let's say, football fans...
If I want to, I
can I go and racially abuse someone? You absolutely shouldn't not do that. Can I say to someone that oh yeah, COVID is wrong and COVID is false.
Yeah.
I have the right to say it, but it doesn't mean that I should be getting the same airtime or my opinion should be weighted as seriously as someone who actually knows what they're talking about. And this is the fundamental problem with this whole idea of, oh, we're curbing free speech and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, you can have your opinion, but that doesn't mean that things can't change. You know what I mean? Like you have people like what's the guy's name over in the US who basically says that all the school shootings can be resolved by arming teachers. Yeah. Like this is Mickey Mouse crazy fucking behavior. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And again, we're in so this podcast is based in Ireland. Typically speaking, Ireland is pretty moderate. Ireland is a really, really nice place to live because
Rosie Dandy and Greenfields and the way
exactly.
we go. Yeah.
Our politicians, as I said, our politicians are generally dignified. We don't get involved.
Minus a few.
We don't get involved in war. We've no snakes, no scorpions, no hurricanes, no earthquakes. Go to the pub, you'll be grand. That's kind of the environment that we operate in, right? So there where you see all this stuff going in, our immediate reaction is, you people are fucking insane. Yeah. Whereas a lot of other people will say, oh no, this is our right. This is our right to talk about free speech. And this is what, and again, we've seen in countless occasions, and I don't want to rehash it again because we've done this to death, but your Cambridge Analytica, your Brexit, your Trump.
The power that these...
It has shown that people, and even if it's only on the margins. So again, just to go back to Macron a minute ago, and this is the last time I'm actually but ultimately, he won the election, but a 10% or 15% swing isn't that much in the context of a straight kind of street fight, shall we say? A little bit of manipulation on your social media, and automatically it swings the other way. People, I think, get confused whereby when we're talking about social media manipulating people, it's not manipulating everyone, because a lot of people will seek out the information or whatever the case would be. But if you manipulate people on the margins who can be swayed either way, and you're swaying them based on emotion as opposed to actual science, logic, facts, that's where you have issues emerging in society.
I think that's interesting because one of the things he said, like, there's kind of four main things that he kind of wants to do, and one of them is he wants to show if tweets have been demoted or promoted, or basically is there something in the background that's deciding, and that kind of goes into the whole, right? But that goes into him opening up the algorithm. He just wants to show this, but go back to the whole area of the business cap on and how does Twitter make money. Do you want to do that? Well, no, is Twitter going to be still the same thing it is?
I'm not worried about the business model, because fundamentally he has bought it. He has two incredible businesses in SpaceX and Tesla. I do not know why, once conquering space and trying to conquer the environment, you then need to go and conquer communication as well. Yeah. In 20 years' time, we could be having this conversation. Well, no, I'd be dead. But we'll be having this conversation.
Self and Owen will still be here.
That's it, yeah. Owen will be up here doing the interviews instead. But ultimately, we could be looking back in a number of years' time and saying, isn't he, in the same way that he changed space exploration, maybe or maybe not for the better, he's trying to change the way that we travel in terms of consumer transport. We could be looking back and saying, this is the guy that actually went in, broke the back on social media and democratized it, but democratized it in a safe and legitimate way. Or we could be looking at it and going, we thought it was bad. We thought all the horses had been let out of the gate, and then he let even more horses run in, and the whole thing is on fire and it's a fiery mess. So we don't really know what way this is going to go. He has said things like he's going to start verifying and authenticating users and getting rid of bots. Yeah. Very, very positive stuff. But I worry about the opening up the stable door and just letting everyone run riot on these platforms. There has to be some legitimate moderation that occurs. And just to give an example, if you were to put an advert, or even not an advert, if I was to write an opinion piece and I was to put it into a local newspaper, if I am racist, homophobic, xenophobic, that doesn't get published. Yeah. Or at the very least, it's passed on to a guard or something like that, and they deal with it. Because there is no moderation, typically speaking, on these platforms, it goes out, and that creates an overall kind of crowd or a swarm effect, whereby people think that they can behave in this kind of way. And like it showed, and I know you're not into football and sports necessarily, but it showed last year when England lost the Euro final, and they missed a number of penalties. It just so happened that the lads who missed...
Yeah, your man got ridiculed, didn't he?
Racist behaviour, just absolute abject racism. And we know that this is a part of culture, but if there is no punishment, it legitimizes it. Now, I'm not saying for kind of a Wild West scenario again, but my point is that if there's no punishment and no moderation, that's dangerous.
Well, following on from that, when you talk about the change area and the kind of moderation, one of the big areas he talks about, and he's put up polls on Twitter in the whole area of, do we want an edit button on Twitter? Now, I'm looking at him putting out this kind of stuff, and next thing it's all coming back up and surfaces in the media for the last couple of days. He did not start this. This is something I'm on. I got a thing during the week that I'm 10 years now on Twitter. I felt very special. I got my little anniversary badge. Didn't share it though. But since I've been on Twitter, I have been looking for and trying and watching articles and seeing people talk about an edit button. It's not something he's trying to bring in, but I do think it is interesting that the possibility of this is going to come in. Now, we talked there about the tweet. It's kind of in the moment, it's gone and it's out. Is there a reason to edit it? No. But if someone makes a mistake and makes a boo-boo and says something really bad in terms of a racist comment, they'll either delete it, but like if you edit it, you still said it, it's still out there. Someone screenshotted it, especially if you're in some sort of a public figure role, do you know?
Yeah, like when we're talking about editing, people are probably talking about, I'm working in marketing.
I made a spelling mistake.
There's a big difference between that and then retroactively. Yeah. But you can't do that though, because...
But what I thought was interesting is we put it out and a couple of people now have come back and said they would... So I don't think it's a simple yes or no answer. I think there has to be a couple of things around it. So like if you're putting an edit button, I do think there has to be some sort of this has been edited or an edit, and even see the history. I've seen somewhere someone said like it should only be available for an hour. So like I'm thinking back to something I said 2 years ago. I can go back and edit that.
Doesn't. Then just delete it. The problem here is that if you post something and it's racist or it's inflammatory or it's defamatory, whatever you want to say, and I retweet whatever you say for whatever reason, if you then change the content of that, I am then, as the retweeter, being misrepresented because the content that I have retweeted has changed. Either that or you've got two different messaging streams. This stuff isn't as easy as he's going to make
it's not a yes and a no
this
thing.
idea of having an open source platform so people can see the way things are going, that's not going to be easy. Do you know? Now, again, if there is someone who can do it from a technical perspective, I would absolutely say it is probably Elon Musk and the people that he works with. My issue is, what is the ideology or the culture that he is now going to bring to Twitter in terms of what is his definition of free speech and what does that actually mean in practical terms?
I'm sure Trump will tell him.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, see, this is the problem.
Yeah.
Like he's back.
Yeah,
he's back. He's running again. Big Joe's in trouble.
Well, look, we'll see. Look, as we said, this podcast going out a couple of days after a potential deal has been done. We don't know. We could be totally wrong. Yeah. We could make an absolute fool of ourselves, which would be the first time.
I think just on that again, and just to wrap it up, because I think it brings things together. So I found a quote, and they kind of set out almost like a mission statement for Musk or what his mission should be going into kind of this purchase. And they said his mission should be to remove bigotry and conspiracy theories that are harmful to our information ecosystem, threaten public health and safety, and undermine democracy. If that's a mission statement that he has, then all your free speech and stuff like that can follow afterwards. But if the mission is Wild West, uncontrolled internet, I think that's incredibly dangerous.
Yeah, 100%.
So in more joyous news, I suppose, this week...
This better be good now.
Oh, no. Well, no, you won't like it.
All right.
But Ogilvy, one of the biggest ad agencies in the world, basically said that they are no longer going to run any campaigns whereby an influencer has edited their appearance via Photoshop or anything like that.
Too right.
So I presume you're pretty gutted that a lot of your business is going down the Swanee.
No, I don't use influencer marketing.
Oh no, I was talking about your model range that you do yourself.
Neck down. Yeah. Is that what they're actually doing, is it?
Yeah, they announced it there earlier on. So basically what they said is that...
That's a huge wallop.
It is, but it's one of two things, is that either one, they just don't support it at all, or in the same way that if you put content in it, you have to have hashtag ad. Like, so we are not being paid by Wicklow Wolf to drink their beer. So this is not a hashtag ad. Whereas if they were paying us, or any sponsor was paying us, and if any sponsor would like to get in touch with us, that would
Do you
then
want to do
be
that piece to camera?
that's it. Yeah, that would then be #ad. So, so in this particular scenario, what they're basically saying is that either they stop using influencers who doctor their photographs, or it has to be, which I think is really, really clever. You have to identify within the ad that you have doctored.
I've touched myself up.
I've touched me. No, that's a different thing entirely. If you say that you do that, you're on hiding to nothing, depending on what you're promoting, of course.
Of course. The last bit of news, I suppose, you've actually kept it fairly quiet, which I'm very, very surprised of. But you got no award this week.
Oh yeah, I got no.
Well, I know I'm bigging it up a little bit here.
I didn't get an award. One of my clients got an award for the biggest and best SME in the region we are, which is Cork.
Best SME in Cork. Yeah,
best
very
SME
good.
in Cork.
No, it's good.
Bad, yeah.
It's good to get the other awards, isn't it? Bring it in next week and we put it up on the shelf.
We'll put it up on the shelf. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not a bad idea.
# not ad. So the last thing we were going to talk about, the last area we're going to talk about.
The last thing, which is going to take up the half the episode. Yeah.
I hope so anyway. Yeah, I hope so. But a lot of talk this week around Netflix, and basically not that they're on the decrease, but their subscribers are down and they're looking at ways of fixing their whole model and trying to get some money back in and all that kind of area. So they're getting a bit of a going this week over the last couple of days. Was it 200,000 subscribers they're down?
Yeah, so effectively, no, it's more than that. So effectively, last week only, they had a drop off of their overall market capitalization of 35%. Since the start of the year, they have lost 62% of their overall market capitalization, which is an absolutely extraordinary number, particularly when Netflix was kind of obviously your Amazons, your Metas and so on and so forth, but Netflix were in that ballpark, right, in terms of maybe not there, but could get there.
Well, that's important
eventually.
to say, right? So, probably the latest one, the big ones, we'll say Disney Plus. Amazon was out before it, wasn't it? If I'm right in saying. So, but for a long time, that's what we're only talking in the last 5-6 years, maybe even that.
But Disney only launched last year.
That's what I'm saying. But even Amazon, we'd say the last 5 years, all of them to get in. But Netflix were dominating before that for so long.
But this is the funny thing, and I think this is what's important to highlight. They are still dominating.
Yes.
So in terms of the global on-demand market for streaming TV shows, movies, and so on and so forth, Netflix still, we reckon, estimated, still have about 45% of the overall market share. Now, what's important here is that Netflix have said that there's a slowdown in terms of user acquisition. So there's not as many new users signing up to their app as would have been previously. But more importantly, they're predicting that they're going to lose a further 2 million users this quarter. Now, the 700,000 there are possibly Russian, but ultimately
they came out with a statement that basically blamed everything under the sun, apart from, obviously, of course, it's nothing to do with us kind of a thing. You know, it was, as you mentioned, there's the audience is not there. They were talking about decrease in income and living. Yes, Russia was a big one that they mentioned.
But I agree with them. If you look at their platform, it is by far and away the best out of all the streaming platforms. In terms of cultural impact, in terms of quality of content, the artificial intelligence that they have built into the system itself, which Disney still haven't cracked, the range and choice that's available to people. And I think they're almost... The problem that they have is that, in my mind, their main competitors that they're going up against have a lot of assets to leverage off, whereas Netflix is just a streaming platform and a content creation house. So what do I mean by that? If you take Prime in the US in particular, and so everyone knows across the world, inflation is going to the roof. People do have less money to spend things on. And during a pandemic, when someone might have just had, or when someone would have had a Netflix, a Disney, a Prime, Hulu, HBO Plus, now they're scaling back and they're just getting Netflix.
I even done it after hearing this during the week. Do you know, I have Netflix, Disney Plus.
No, you don't have Disney Plus. You have my password for Disney Plus. So go on
don't
anyway.
let them know. That's what we're going to come in here in a minute.
Coming in here criticizing Netflix, and he's the fucking reason why they're losing all of their market share.
But like that then, I give my password of Netflix to other people. It is actually nice, isn't it? But like I would count in there like Spotify as well. I'm trying to think is there anyone else, but like
No, but
even
Spotify's music.
but for consuming content,
Oh,
and all that kind of
entertainment
stuff,
in general.
yes, it
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
So like if you look at all of these platforms, like you're racking up a bill of the guts of nearly 50 quid a week, or sorry, a month. Like you
Oh,
know,
it's
especially
more.
if you're on
It's
the
more.
Amazon and you're using all these.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't use it, but then like you know they're talking about there's a cheaper alternative and all this kind of stuff. But like throw all that in, and then you do go to a cinema. Like it's easily on the entertainment side stuff, 100 quid a month. It is quite expensive, and that's what a lot of people, as you just mentioned there, a lot of people are going to be looking at it as their overall spend. So like it's going to be which one's going to be culled over the other. Now, when you look at Netflix, I'm very much the opinion at the moment. I kind of toss between them all. I'm not fully satisfied with any of them, to be
You
honest.
toss between them all.
Yeah.
Carry on, just so the users, just so the listeners noted that he tosses between them all. Carry on there, Dave.
What's wrong with that?
Carry on. The users.
I
the
browse.
Our listeners will get it.
I want to let it in. I browse between them all. And actually, I was what?
Carry on. No, carry on. You're fine.
But I'm not fully happy with any of them, and I don't think there is some good content coming out on Netflix. The reason I'd be on Disney Plus is more so the previous stuff that they would have, the older stuff. I think it's a much better choice there. But like, are any of them absolutely blowing me away? No, I don't think so. And
No, it's phenomenal. Some of the content Netflix
Some
is
of it.
incredible.
some of it.
So if you take, so let's go down through. So let's go down
big
through
ones.
a few different examples, right? And this is why I say what's important here is that Netflix traditionally they were never storytellers. They were never content creators. They were curators. They would take movies from elsewhere. Now they are creators, and they are some of the best creators in the world. As far as I'm concerned, even Amazon Prime, who have by far and away more resources because it's Amazon than Netflix do, they haven't cracked the original content stuff yet. Whereas I actually think that the Netflix have. Their main problem is that they're going up against Disney, who are, in terms of history, legacy, the biggest and best content
And if
creators in the
you
world.
have kids in the house, you're probably going to keep Disney because they have that back catalogue that
And
they
that-
have held on to and never released anywhere.
absolutely.
you know?
And they're acquiring more, so they've now got, like, if you look at the
Star
biggest
Wars, the big
series in the
ones.
last 20 years is Star Wars, in the last 10 it's Marvel. Do you know what I mean? So they have that. But if you're going to look at just the content that's been created, so let's look at a few of them. So one, and I sat down last week and I watched the Jimmy Savile documentary, which, by the way, everyone should be forced to watch just on the basis of it demonstrated an absolute failure in social justice, failure in policing, failure in the media in and of itself. Like, you're looking at the documentary going, lads, how the fuck didn't you realize that this was going on? And people should be actually forced to watch it just because it actually demonstrates what happens when your institutions of state don't do their fucking job. It's like, I was watching it with my housemate, and we were both sitting there absolutely sickened by the old documentary. But anyway, so again, culturally very, very relevant, should have an impact. In terms of other things that they've created, Making a Murderer created a huge amount of controversy over in the UK. There was another documentary they did which actually slips my mind to them. I think it was called 18 or something like that, where it exposed racial injustice in America, where there was a certain quite large percentage of the black population who were in prison in relation to others, and it exposed some of the hypocrisy that was going on there. So that's all Netflix orientated content. They've also done something which, not from a factual perspective, from an entertainment perspective, is quite interesting, is that they borrow quite a lot from international filmmaking cultures and make them relevant to their audience. So, for example, Squid Game was developed in South Korea. And just to look at the statistics around that, so within 10 days of its release on Netflix, it was the #1 show in 90 different countries. And that's a South Korea. Yeah, there you go. He's looking at us there now going, you fucking bastards. But anyway, by the way, I've gone way over again.
Kicking in.
For people who don't know this at all, generally speaking, we go by BBC rules in that I'm allowed 4 fucks and 3 cunts in the hour. But anyway, we've gone way above that this evening. So,
that drink is right stuff.
oh, stop, is it what? Other ones then as well. Money Heist was produced in Spain. Very, very popular. Elite produced in Spain. So there's a huge amount of content that they've curated over the last over the last kind of number of years. And if I compare that to their competitors, it blows them out of the
Yeah,
water.
look, no, I do agree with you. The content they're bringing out is fantastic. It is a league above their own, but I'm just on about the overall. It just becomes kind of stale in all the platforms. So, but the one thing I will say is, as you already mentioned there, the whole area of this kind of machine learning, the personalization, the algorithms, Netflix are on point. They know exactly. You can guarantee that you're going to go on. You're going, whether you want to watch it or not, you're going to be fed something that would be of interest if you're in the mood to watch it. You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah. No,
So they are fantastic in that, and way ahead of the others. But like, I was looking up even ways that they try to grab in, you know, customers outside of.
Can I tell a joke before you move on? The joke is very funny. So they use the artificial intelligence, you know, when they're doing their. So if you watched a certain movie and you clicked out of it midway through, they kind of note that, okay, this was the context of that movie. They don't like that kind of movie. We're not going to recommend that again. So, and I do it for my students. I do it for my students every year, which happens when the AI doesn't work effectively. And basically, he was this case study whereby someone went and watched A Bug's Life.
Right.
And then because the AI wasn't mature enough yet and because it was coded very, very badly, afterwards when they came back out into the main homepage, it was because you watched A Bug's Life, we recommend that you watch The Human Centipede as well. Which is a fantastic,
a totally different film.
Fantastic, not a children's movie.
Not a children's
Pixar
one, no.
didn't create The Human Centipede, most certainly not. Anyway, you were saying.
Sub-brand. No, I was just saying.
Moving on from The Human
Moving on
Centipede.
very, very quickly. The whole area of machine learning, I think, is fascinating, and I think they are definitely on point with it. I think of all the probably platforms that I use, Netflix are up there. Like, I think they're even better than Spotify sometimes. They're better than all these kind of platforms, I think. I was actually looking there. It was the whole area of that that 40 to 50 clicks is what it takes an average person to find something they want to watch. You know, so obviously when you look at that, as we talked about before in terms of even the algorithms across social media, every time that click, for anyone that doesn't know, every time you make a move or you look at something or you pause on something, you watch an ad, whatever it is, literally these platforms they're learning what you like. They're literally piling data on you, and that's where it becomes incredibly powerful. So like, you can imagine how powerful this is when it comes to areas of advertising. So like, where we would start kicking in is like, you know, trying to tap in, I suppose, into this data. So to date, I suppose Netflix has kept, obviously, you know, they haven't done advertising. They
Correct.
haven't looked at it. But I think now there's talks that, is this a way they're going to go? That to start making up the money, start making up the numbers, are they going to have to start feeding ads? And I think, me personally, if you're paying for a platform like this, it's like YouTube, for example. You get fed the ads, you know what you're getting yourself in for because you're not paying for it. But if you go pay for it, you get rid of the ads, same as Spotify. I'm already paying for Netflix. I do not want to be shown any ads. So there's talks now of whether they start showing ads, or the other option is they start increasing the prices, which they do every couple of years anyway. Do you know? So now that's why they're starting to rank up the prices again. So like, what do you think to do? Should they start showing ads?
So I think for those who are on the higher subscription, which is 15 quid, right?
Something around that,
It's not like, so for 15 quid, you should not have any ads or anything even remotely close to it. The beauty of Netflix versus traditional network television, your Sky and so on and so forth, is that there's no advertising. And even from a storytelling perspective, Netflix is, so I remember a number of years ago, Reed Hastings, who's the CEO of Netflix, or the owner of Netflix, said that their biggest competitor is sleep.
Yeah.
In that, if people are binging constantly,
They're
and
not watching.
we've all been there, right? Where we've worked the next day, they're students and they're coming to my lecture. They turn on something.
This series. Next thing, you're 5 episodes into series or
and
season 2,
and it's 5 o'clock in the morning ultimately, right? So there is, for me, they need to keep that immersive experience. Now, I would say that in some international cultures, and we mentioned a minute ago, particularly in the US, where their customers can leverage against the other competitor products to get a better product overall.
They're
So,
not
for
reliant on
example,
it. Yeah.
So, for example, if you take Disney Plus, if someone is a subscriber to Disney Plus, Disney has the ability to sell them their parks, their hotels, their resorts. They can sell them the blockbuster Star Wars movie or Marvel. So we went to see Batman with one other guy, was it last week? it cost us probably
It's
in the
12,
range
13
of,
quid a ticket. Yeah.
and then you've got food on top of that. Overall, you're probably talking about 70 quid. If you wanted to, you could probably have a scenario whereby you've got Disney selling someone 2 weeks before Star Wars comes into the cinema. The next Star Wars film, you get that film for 20 quid for a family. All of a sudden, it's worth.
But they done it, sure. Even they done it. I think we talked about
they did it with Mulan.
No, they done it with the Black Widow one, and they got an awful trouble for it.
Well, they got in trouble for it, but ultimately it works, right?
Yeah.
Because it's another way for them to generate revenue. In the same way that if you've got kids and you're within any kind of a relatively big driving range of one of the parks, the idea of you paying that subscription, but then you get access to the launch of the new Star Wars land or whatever the case may be, is a value add for you. Because, and the other company they're up against is Amazon Prime. There is a natural value add there in that you get your 24-hour shipping and all the rest of it. Yeah. So there are added value products that come with the competitors that they're up against. Netflix don't have that. They just have the content that they are providing to their customers. So therefore, they do have to change their business model somewhat. And other brands are experimenting with this as well. Disney have started looking at advertising on the platform. Now, what I think is that people who historically have used Netflix without ads, they cannot now be served ads. If they do that, they will kill off their user base entirely. Whereas could you offer a lower level subscription, so maybe 3 to 5 euros a month as opposed to your 15, and those customers get ads? That would possibly be something that people could stomach, because then they have the choice of going in at the lower rate and where they get access to all the stuff, but it's with ads, or you can go for the higher rate whereby you don't get any ads at all. That is something that I think could work. The other thing that they can do is they can create more value per customer. So they're talking at the moment about stopping people sharing passwords. Again, you have my password for Disney, not Netflix, to be fair. But again, it's the exact same idea. So I think that there is an avenue there for Netflix to generate a huge amount of consumer or market value through advertising on their platform, but how they do it is critical so it doesn't interrupt the storytelling experience. A new subscription needs to attract customers who wouldn't be on Netflix previously, as opposed to interfering with the experience of their current consumer base, would be my thinking.
So I think in the whole area of adverts, that's what we need to look at. Like in terms of, it's like the whole area of the cinema, right? If we go in the morning as marketers and we're going to look to put an ad into the cinema, we start looking at what's out, time of day, the audience, and I think, and I still think it's a very underrated platform for marketers, for cinema adverts. It's just not utilised, but it's the only uninterrupted media out there. And Netflix will start going that way, if it starts becoming big screen TVs and all this kind of stuff, it already is, sorry, but I think the ads have to then be fit in with, once again, the genre, the audience that's being shown. And that's where it can become incredibly powerful for people in our game in terms of marketing. So I do think that it will become a way to offer it. But me as a consumer, I just don't want ads. Yeah,
I know. None of us want ads. And again, I think that's why you're offering it to a different type of consumer. I think it's either someone who's on maybe less income and wants it as an alternative to your kind of traditional network kind of stuff, or maybe students and things like that who haven't mastered the art of streaming yet, or they don't have very good Wi-Fi or something like that. So it's not, again, I don't think it's a big audience in Europe. I think in the US it could be quite effective. But what's interesting then when you say advertising, I think there's two different things here. There is native advertising, which is content that they can curate in local markets. And then there is also advertising, which is interruptive. Okay. So if we look at, and I just picked it out beforehand, two different kind of case studies. One was Drive to Survive, which is the Formula One documentary, and the other one is The Last Dance, which is the Michael Jordan documentary. So after the airing of the first episode of the Jordan documentary, sales of Air Jordans are up about 40% in terms of volume on StockX alone, and the average final bid price also increased substantially across all Air Jordan ranges effectively. So that's one case study and it worked. The more interesting one, I think, is the Drive to Survive, because that is over the last 4 years where they've created that documentary series. And just to look at some of the data around it. So more than 400,000 turned up for last year's US Grand Prix. 1 million more watched the race on television, and the overall ratings for the season are up more than 40%, making it the most watched F1 season in America, which again is, so there's a direct correlation there between viewership on Netflix and the actual impact in terms of consumer engagement. So the sport also added an estimated 73 million fans last year in markets including Brazil, China and France. So new markets that they hadn't really gotten into before in terms of the F1 specifically. And according to Nielsen, it also sparked a massive fan spike in the ever coveted 16 to 35-year-old demographic who have disposable income and they spend money. And in particular, Nielsen showed that 77% of the growth that I've just kind of listed out was attributed to that age group. So that shows you, and this was two examples, Drive to Survive and also the Last Dance Jordan documentary. They almost give a behind-the-scenes look, and they tell the stories in a certain way whereby it adds a huge amount of brand equity to those brands that could not be achieved on TikTok, YouTube, and that because it's not long form. And that type of immersive, in-depth kind of feeling that consumers will get, which resonates them, can only come from something like a Netflix show whereby, again, it's on the big screen, maybe not on the big screen, maybe it's on your phone, but if it's on your phone, you probably got your headphones in. Again, it is way more immersive than your TikTok, which is 10 seconds. So the value that could be added from them creating native content, I think has already been proven. I think you might have something coming in there whereby there is more domestic native content being produced. So, for example, Irish-orientated content or England-orientated content, which focuses on, for example, a documentary on Camden Market. You know,
wasn't that actually part of something that they had to produce so much?
To
be operating in the certain countries or the EU, or I can't remember.
It's not so it's curated, so it's what appears on the platform as opposed to what they develop themselves.
Yeah.
So Squid Game curated. But you could also produce your own stuff if you wanted to create a kind of a way to do that native form of advertising. But then also you have, if you have all this data in terms of what people are interested in, you can create ads and content that aren't really disruptive, that are actually valuable based on the data and the AI that's running through Netflix in and of itself. So I think it's a really, really good opportunity for marketers and advertisers, but I would really, really hope that Netflix don't ruin their platform through using that, through creating an advertising platform that effectively damages the storytelling experience.
So look, we'll keep an eye, I suppose, on what way they overtake it. But I suppose, like, looking at everything we kind of talked about tonight, it kind of just shows you that there really is a change in technology. There's always changing, but like really, even in the last couple of weeks, like it's going to be changed. It's going to be topsy-turvy again. Like it's going to be thrown on its head again, and it's only going to be to see what way it goes over the next couple of weeks with Elon taking over the world, Macron trying to steady the ship on this side.
I think it's more, it's more like it's
Donald Trump will be back on Twitter.
Donald Trump will be back on Twitter.
Yeah.
I think it's more what the disruption is going to happen over the next kind of, I say, months rather so than weeks. Like in reality, this was always going to happen after 2 years of a pandemic, right? Like the world just stagnated.
Awakening back up again.
Yeah, and like, I mean, even I saw a report earlier on that said that online sales have now pretty much reverted to their pre-COVID levels in the UK. So like you went from 10% to 12% disruption in certain categories to 30, 40%, and now all of a sudden you're slowly reverting back. So again, there is a lot to be said for the lived experience that people want. But I do think that this change, again, I really, really hope for our sake that this takeover has gone through just for the sake of this episode. Because otherwise this is going to sound really, really stupid to people listening on a Thursday.
Could be issuing an apology next week.
Exactly. So, like, I think between like a lot of these tech companies maybe starting to struggle in certain instances, others are going to start innovating, and Netflix are struggling and are going to have to innovate. You've got the likes of Prime who are constantly innovating. You've got Twitter who are going to have to innovate because Musk obviously has quite a lot of his own money in this, and Tesla isn't exactly a bucket full of cash at the moment. It's all it's market cap money as opposed to free cash flow. So I think that there is a lot of disruption that is going to happen over the next 12 to 18 months. Now, maybe it's just a flash in the pan, and it's just a lot has happened in a short space of time.
It is,
but it
but,
really feels that there's momentum in terms of change happening here.
Yeah. And once again, like everything we've mentioned, as you've already kind of said, it's not like, you know, low-level companies or startup companies are kind of hitting the scene about to take over.
Guys.
These are all the big ones. Like, you know, we've already mentioned tonight alone, like Netflix, Twitter, Meta, you know, they're all the big ones.
And they're going to be, look, we haven't spoken about it yet, but there's a huge amount that's going to happen, well, maybe or maybe not, in the next number of years in terms of cryptocurrencies, NFTs, metaverse, whatever the fuck that is. We haven't really defined that yet.
Create metaverse for the pub, will we?
There we go. That's it, yeah. Changes.
Sell off a bit of land over there.
Sell off a bit of land over there. If anyone wants to buy an NFT of a photo of us in the bar, then send me an email.
Absolute thousands. I think we should do it.
Not with us, they wouldn't. No.
Give it a go.
No.
Be a good experiment.
No. Maybe me by myself.
Will you stay on Twitter now?
When Musk? Oh yeah, of course. I'm not. Look, I'm on WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook, despite the fact that they're owned by the Antichrist. So I'm perfectly happy to stay on Twitter. But you have to, right? I'm not. I don't really believe in these. I don't really believe in these kind of bottom up, societal orientated revolutions in relation to tech companies. It's like someone
it's almost bottom up, but he's bottom up, but he's top down in one way.
But it's the other, like, it's like someone, I remember I had a colleague used to say to me, if you've got a left leaning attitude or a socialist or critical thinking way of looking at things, but yet you're tweeting from an iPhone, then what are you talking about? And I'm like, well, no, because I'm going to buy an iPhone because what other fucking choice do I have? Yeah. It's the same thing in relation to your social media. I'm not just going to go off WhatsApp because I'm a little bit annoyed with what Mark and Cheryl are doing to people in terms of, we've been through this before. But the fundamental key here is it's going to be very, very interesting for marketers, yes, but more so for society. Again, we talked about Macron.
Just do the outro with that.
Yeah, ultimately, yeah. But again, there was a right-wing nut job nearly got in. Again, same thing's going to happen in 2024 in the US, where Trump is probably going to go for re-election again. No doubt about it. And again, unless we have learned from the past, whereby we just let these social platforms have no guardrails at all, then we're in for a rough 5-10 years. We really, really are. But we'll end it on a happy note.
Give us a happy note.
Literally a note.
Yeah, it was a good one. Thanks very much for watching again. You can follow us on social media. Thanks to Owen for producing it for us. Subscribe, keep up to date and all that jazz. And we'll see you again next week. Take care.
Good luck, lads.